I was in a meeting in Chicago when my neighbor texted me a photo of a for sale sign in my front yard. Did you list your house? The text read. There are people showing it right now. I stared at the photo. My house. The 4-bedroom Craftsman I'd bought 3 years ago in Portland. The one I'd renovated myself. The one with the garden I'd spent 2 summers perfecting. Someone was showing it. Without my permission. I excused myself from the meeting and called my neighbor. Diane, what's happening? I don't know. A realtor showed up this morning with your parents. They said you were relocating for work and asked them to handle the sale. There's a couple walking through right now. My parents. Who lived 2 states away in Arizona. Who I'd seen twice in the past year. Those people need to leave my property immediately. Should I call the police? I'll handle it. Thank you for letting me know. I hung up and called my mother. Allison. How's Chicago? Her voice was cheerful. Why is there a for sale sign in my yard? Silence. Then, oh, you heard about that already. We were going to tell you tonight. Surprise. We're moving to Portland. What does that have to do with selling my house? Well, we need somewhere to live. And you're traveling so much for work, the house just sits empty. We figured we'd sell it and use the money to buy something we can all share. Multi-generational living is very trendy right now. You figured you'd sell my house. Don't say it like that. Children owe their parents a home, Allison. We raised you, fed you, educated you. Now we're retiring and we need support. This is how family works. I sat down in the empty conference room, my mind racing. You can't sell my house. You don't own it. We're on the deed, sweetie. Remember? You put us on when you bought it for estate planning purposes. My stomach dropped. When I'd bought the house, my lawyer had suggested adding my parents to the deed for inheritance tax purposes. A joint tenancy with right of survivorship. I'd been 28 and hadn't thought it through. That doesn't give you the right to sell it without my consent. Actually, the lawyer said we can. Joint tenancy means we all own it equally. We're the majority, 2 against 1. We can outvote you. You consulted a lawyer about this? Of course. We wanted to make sure everything was legal. He said as long as we use the proceeds to buy a new family home, it's perfectly fine. I never agreed to buy a family home. You don't have to agree. That's the point. We're making a decision that's best for the whole family. I'm in Chicago for work. I'll be back Friday. Nothing happens with that house until we discuss this in person. Too late. We accepted an offer this morning. Closing is in 3 weeks. The buyers are very nice. Young couple, first home. You'll feel good about selling to them. You accepted an offer on my house. Our house. And yes. They offered asking price. Gosh. We couldn't turn it down. I hung up without saying goodbye. I called my lawyer, Richard Chin, from the airport. Richard, I need an emergency consultation. My parents are trying to sell my house out from under me. The Portland property? I did the closing on that. You're the primary owner. I added them to the deed. Joint tenancy. He was quiet for a moment. That complicates things. Do you have the original deed? In my safe deposit box. Get it. Meet me at my office tomorrow morning. Bring any documentation about the purchase, the mortgage, everything. Can they actually do this? Legally, it's murky. Joint tenancy gives them ownership rights, but selling without your consent opens them up to lawsuits. If you can prove you provided all the funds for purchase and they contributed nothing, we have grounds to challenge it. I can prove that. I have bank statements, mortgage documents, everything in my name. Good. We'll fight this. But Allison, I have to ask, why did you put them on the deed? You suggested it. For estate planning. I suggested discussing it with your financial advisor first. I never told you to actually do it without proper legal protections. I closed my eyes. I trusted them. I know. That's what they're counting on. The next morning, I met Richard at his office with a file box of documents. Mortgage statements, bank transfers, renovation receipts. Every penny I'd put into the house. He reviewed everything carefully. This is clear. You provided 100% of the funds. They contributed nothing. We can file an action to partition the property, force a sale, and prove your superior ownership interest. How long will that take? Once, maybe a year. And it'll cost you $50,000 in legal fees minimum. I don't have a year. They've already accepted an offer. Then we file an emergency injunction to stop the sale. We argue that the sale was done without your knowledge or consent, that you have superior ownership rights, and that allowing it to proceed would cause irreparable harm. Will it work? Depends on the judge. But we have a good case. Do it. He made some notes. There's something else you should know. If they hired a lawyer to advise them on this, that lawyer is skating very close to ethical violations. Advising clients to sell jointly owned property without all owners' consent is legally questionable. They said their lawyer told them it was fine. Then their lawyer is either incompetent or intentionally misleading them. Either way, we can use that. The injunction hearing was set for Thursday. I flew back to Portland Wednesday night and drove past my house. The for sale sign was still up. Lights were on inside. My parents were living in my house. I parked down the street and called Diane. Are they still there? They moved in on Monday. Brought a moving truck and everything. They told me you'd given them permission to stay while the house sold. I gave them no such permission. I figured. Want me to call the police? Not yet. Let's see what the judge says tomorrow. Thursday morning I met Richard at the courthouse. We were in a small courtroom, just us, my parents, their lawyer, and the judge. My parents' lawyer was a man named Gary Sullivan. He looked confident, relaxed. He clearly thought this was going to be easy. Your Honor, Richard began, we're seeking an emergency injunction to prevent the sale of property located at 847 Maple Street. The defendants, who are joint tenants on the deed, have listed and accepted an offer on the property without my client's knowledge or consent. My client provided 100% of the purchase funds and has superior ownership interest. Judge Martinez, a woman in her 60s, looked at the file. Mr. Sullivan, your response? Your Honor, this is simple property law. Joint tenancy means equal ownership. The defendants have every right to sell. Ms. Harper was informed of the sale and simply disagrees with the decision. That's not grounds for an injunction. I was informed after they'd already accepted an offer, I said. The judge looked at me. Ms. Harper, is it true you placed your parents on the deed voluntarily? Yes, Your Honor. For estate planning purposes. But I paid for the house entirely. They contributed nothing. Contribution of funds doesn't negate ownership rights once the deed is filed. Mr. Sullivan is correct about that. My heart sank. However, the judge continued, selling without attempting to get all owners' consent is problematic. Mr. Sullivan, did your clients attempt to get Ms. Harper's consent before listing the property? They informed her of their intentions, Your Honor. That's not what I asked. Did they attempt to get her consent before listing it? Sullivan hesitated. He believed consent wasn't necessary under joint tenancy rules. You advised them of this? I advised them of their legal rights, yes. Did you advise them that selling without attempting to get unanimous consent could expose them to legal liability? I may not have emphasized that particular point. Judge Martinez made a note. I'm granting a temporary injunction. No sale proceeds until this is resolved. The parties will attend mediation. If mediation fails, we go to full partition trial. Mr. Sullivan, I suggest you brush up on your fiduciary duties to clients. Sullivan's face reddened. Your Honor, Richard said, there's also the matter of the defendants currently occupying the property without permission. They're occupying it? The judge asked. They moved in Monday, I said. I live there. They've essentially moved into my house. Mom stood up. Your Honor, children owe their parents a home. We raised her. We sacrificed everything for her. Now we need a place to live and she's being selfish. Mrs. Harper, sit down, the judge said sharply. This isn't about what children owe parents. This is about property law. Ms. Harper, do you want them removed from the property? Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Sullivan, your clients need to vacate the property immediately. They have nowhere to go. Sullivan protested. That's not the court's problem. They moved into property without permission. They need to leave. Today. Your Honor. Today, Mr. Sullivan. Or I'll hold them in contempt. I drove to my house with Richard and a police officer. My parents' car was in the driveway. The officer knocked. Dad answered. Sir, I have a court order. You need to vacate this property immediately. This is our daughter's house. We have a right to be here. No, sir, you don't. You have 2 hours to remove your belongings. I walked past them into my house. They'd rearranged everything. My furniture was gone, replaced with theirs. My photos were down, replaced with theirs. They'd erased me from my own home. Where's my furniture? I asked. Storage unit, Mom said coldly. We were redecorating for the new buyers. You had no right. We have every right. Children owe their parents a home. She said it again, louder, like repetition would make it true. I don't owe you my home. After everything we did for you, we raised you, fed you, paid for your education. You fulfilled your legal obligations as parents. That doesn't entitle you to steal my house. We're not stealing anything. We're family. What's yours is ours. No, I said quietly. What's mine is mine. They moved out that afternoon. Angry, bitter, cursing me with every box they carried. The next week, mediation failed. They refused to accept anything less than proceeds from the sale. I refused to allow the sale. We went to partition trial. Richard built an airtight case. Bank statements showing I'd paid the down payment, closing costs, mortgage payments for 3 years. Renovation receipts totaling $60,000. Tax returns showing their retirement income couldn't have contributed anything. Their lawyer tried to argue that helping me, emotionally, during the purchase counted as contribution. The judge wasn't impressed. Mr. Sullivan, emotional support doesn't create financial ownership. The evidence is clear. Ms. Harper provided 100% of funds. I'm ruling that she has a 98% ownership interest. Her parents have 2%, essentially the joint tenancy designation, nothing more. Your Honor, that's not. It's exactly fair, Mr. Sullivan. Your clients contributed nothing and tried to steal everything. They're lucky I'm not sanctioning them for fraud. The judge turned to my parents. The property remains Ms. Harper's. The deed will be modified to reflect the ownership percentages. Any future sale requires Ms. Harper's explicit written consent. This court will not reward your attempt to exploit your daughter's trust. Mom started crying. Dad looked furious. Furthermore, the judge continued, Ms. Harper, you're entitled to sue for damages. They occupied your property without permission, removed and stored your belongings, attempted to sell it without consent. You have grounds for a substantial claim. I just want them removed from my deed, I said. Granted. The deed will be corrected within 30 days. 2 weeks later, I was back in my house, my furniture returned, my photos back on the walls. My phone rang. It was my brother Kevin, who I hadn't spoken to in months. Allison, what the hell did you do? I protected my property. You humiliated Mom and Dad in court. They're devastated. They tried to sell my house without permission. Because they needed help. They're retiring, they have no savings, they needed somewhere to live. That's not my problem to solve by losing my home. You're so selfish. Children owe their parents a home. Mom told everyone at Thanksgiving. Everyone agrees with her except you. Then everyone can give them a home. I'm keeping mine. You've destroyed this family over a house. No. They tried to destroy my financial security and I stopped them. There's a difference. He hung up. A month later, the corrected deed arrived. My name only. Clear title. No joint tenancy. My lawyer sent me the final bill. $47,000. Worth every penny. I stood in my living room in my house on my property and felt the weight lift. They tried to take it because they believed children owed parents everything. But I'd learned the most valuable lesson. You don't owe anyone access to what you've built. Not even family. Especially not family who only valued you for what they could take. The eviction notice had arrived on Tuesday just like I'd promised. And my home was finally, completely, legally mine. 3 months later, I was hosting a housewarming party. A real one this time with friends who actually cared about me, not my assets. My colleague Sarah raised her glass. To Allison, who fought for her castle and won. Everyone cheered. I smiled, looking around at the faces of people who'd supported me through the legal battle. Real friends. Real relationships built on mutual respect. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is your father. Your mother is in the hospital. Heart problems. Thought you should know. I stared at the message. Part of me, the part that remembered childhood, birthday cakes, bedtime stories, wanted to respond immediately. But the other part remembered the for sale sign. The moving truck. The way they'd erased me from my own home. I showed the text to Sarah. What are you going to do? She asked. I don't know. You don't owe them anything, you know. Not after what they did. I know. But knowing and feeling were different things. The next morning I called the hospital. Mom was stable. Minor heart episode, not life-threatening. They were keeping her for observation. I didn't visit. But I did call Kevin. Is she really okay? Why do you care? His voice was bitter. Because despite everything she's still my mother. Then act like her daughter. Come see her. Apologize. Make this right. Apologize for what? Keeping my house. For putting her in the hospital. The stress of the court case, the humiliation, losing the sale, it all affected her heart. Kevin, she tried to steal my house. The stress was self-inflicted. You're unbelievable. You know that. Mom was right about you. You care more about money and property than family. I care about boundaries. There's a difference. Whatever helps you sleep at night. He hung up. I did send flowers to the hospital. No card, no name. Just flowers. A week later I got a letter in the mail. From my parents' lawyer, Gary Sullivan. Inside was a demand for $150,000. Emotional distress damages for the court case. Loss of expected housing for the failed sale. Reimbursement for moving costs. I forwarded it to Richard. He called me laughing. This is the most desperate thing I've ever seen. He has no grounds. This is pure harassment. What do I do? Ignore it. If he files, we'll countersue for frivolous litigation. But he won't file. He knows he'd lose and probably get sanctioned. They're really not going to stop, are they? Probably not. People like this, they genuinely believe they're entitled to what's yours. The court ruling won't change that belief. You just have to hold your boundaries. For how long? Forever, probably. Or until they find another target. That evening I sat in my backyard with a glass of wine watching the sunset. My backyard. My garden. My sanctuary. My phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. Allison, it's your mother. I'm out of the hospital. I just wanted to tell you that you've broken my heart. I thought I raised you better than this. Children owe their parents a home. It's biblical. It's traditional. It's how families survive. But you've chosen property over people. Money over love. I hope your house keeps you warm at night because you'll be alone in it. No family. No support. Just you and your precious ownership documents. She hung up. I deleted the voicemail. Then I texted Sarah, still on for brunch tomorrow? Absolutely. My place or yours? Wine. I'm making blueberry pancakes. Perfect. Your kitchen is way better anyway. I smiled. My kitchen. My house. My life. My choice. The ownership documents had been updated. The legal team had done their job. The eviction notice had arrived Tuesday just as planned. And I'd learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes protecting yourself means walking away from people who only loved what you could give them. Even when those people were family. Especially when those people were family. I looked up at my house, lights glowing warm in the evening dusk. It wasn't just a house anymore. It was proof that I could stand up for myself. It was evidence that boundaries mattered. It was mine. And that was enough.